There's a moment in a man's life that no one talks about. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It doesn't explode. It creeps in quietly, like fog covering a city overnight. You don't notice it until everything feels muted. It starts with small things. You enter a room, no one looks up. You offer help, no one really thanks you. You share an opinion, people ignore it. Or worse, dismiss it like it was never said. At first, you think it's your fault. Maybe you weren't loud enough. Maybe you didn't explain well. So, you try harder. You show up more often. You agree more. You help more. You say yes to everything. But the more you give, the less you are seen. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest danger is not in being hated, it is in becoming invisible." And this is the wound no one warns you about. From childhood, you were taught to be good, be polite, be agreeable, don't stand out, make everyone happy. But here's the truth society hides. The world doesn't respect those who only obey. It rewards you for being silent until you are so silent that you disappear completely. In psychology, this is called the nice guy trap. A man who tries too hard to please everyone ends up pleasing no one, not even himself. At work, at home, in relationships, the pattern repeats. You give. You wait for validation. It doesn't come. You give more. You wait again. Still nothing. Because what you didn't realize is this. When you make yourself too available, too easy to access, people subconsciously value you less. That's called availability bias. When something is always there, it's taken for granted. Imagine two rare metals. One is common, everywhere. The other is hidden, hard to find. Which one holds more value? It's the same with people. When you never say no, when you always agree, when you never set boundaries, you teach the world that you are replaceable. You teach them that your time, your energy, even your presence is cheap. And here's the most painful part. The system is built this way on purpose. From school systems to corporate offices, from social groups to entire governments. The machine runs on compliant people. People who won't push back. People who won't stand up. That's why the kindest men are often the first to lose control over their lives. Not because they're bad, not because they're weak, but because they trusted a false program. The program said, "Be nice, and you'll be rewarded." But reality says, "Be strong, or you'll be forgotten." This is the quiet trap, the silent wound. Not violence, not hatred, just being erased by your own silence. From the first days of school, you were given instructions. Be polite, be patient, wait your turn. Raise your hand, don't interrupt. Blend in, fit the system. At home it wasn't much different. Be the quiet one, be helpful, don't speak unless spoken to. That's where the programming begins. Quiet, invisible rules shaping invisible men. Carl Jung called it the persona trap. You create a mask to survive social systems. You present what others expect, not what you truly are. At first, it works. Teachers like you, classmates tolerate you. Employers think you're easy to manage. But slowly, the mask consumes the man. You forget the real self beneath the social role. That's why so many men today describe themselves as empty, not depressed, just hollow, because they traded selfhood for acceptance. And acceptance always comes with a hidden tax. That tax is respect. Modern psychology calls this the warmth versus competence trade-off. And it's an unavoidable rule. The more you focus on being warm, agreeable, likable, the less people perceive you as competent, authoritative, or powerful. Think about it. Who gets more respect? The quiet, agreeable man in the corner? Or the man who knows when to say no? The man who's always available? Or the man who chooses when to show up? And here's the most dangerous part. This is not an accident. It's by design. Social systems from kindergarten to corporate offices run more smoothly. When people obey first and think later, a workforce that doesn't push back, a student body that doesn't ask questions. Even on social media, platforms reward content that's easy, friendly, inoffensive. not content that challenges systems. That's why emotional compliance is installed early and reinforced constantly. And here's the hidden rule tied to it all: availability bias. In cognitive psychology, availability bias means we value what is rare and dismiss what is common. When something is always there, it fades into the background. Imagine two men. One responds to every text in 5 seconds. The other takes his time. Who feels more valuable? The same applies to your presence, your opinions, your time. When you make yourself endlessly available, you become psychologically invisible to others. You train the world to see you as background noise. Now ask yourself, how many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How many times have you agreed just to avoid friction? That habit didn't come from nowhere. It was installed in you by parents, by teachers, by media. Because polite men are easier to manage. Polite men don't rebel. But here's the cost. Every time you silence your own voice to make others comfortable, you weaken your position, you drain your internal power. And worse, you teach people around you how to treat you. If you always agree, you train others to ignore your needs. If you never push back, you train others to push you further. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most men never see this trap. They blame bad luck, bad bosses, bad relationships. But the real problem was false programming. You weren't born weak. You were taught to act weak. Breaking that program doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming clear. You decide when to say yes. You decide when to stay silent. You decide when to walk away. That's real strength. That's what the system doesn't want from you, because a man like that cannot be controlled. Power is rarely about physical strength in the modern world. It's about control, and control is emotional. Most men misunderstand this. They think control means yelling louder, acting tougher, forcing outcomes. But real control is quieter, invisible. It shows up in who needs who more. Jung understood this as part of shadow integration, learning the hidden laws that run beneath polite society. One of those laws is what I call emotional economics. Think about relationships, whether romantic, social, or professional. There's always a balance of need. The person who feels more anxious when the other leaves holds less power. The person who cares less about the outcome, paradoxically, controls it. Nietzsche said, "He who needs least holds the most power." Imagine two men. One constantly checks his phone, waiting for messages, wondering if people like him, needing to be seen, heard, wanted. The other turns his phone off. He moves forward with or without external attention. Who holds real power? It's not about coldness for the sake of it. It's about recognizing how need creates weakness. Emotional neediness is the modern form of slavery. Not to a person, but to a system of approval. Social media runs on this. Likes, comments, views. People post not for expression, but for validation. And in doing so, they become dependent. They feel highs when praised, and lows when ignored. Carl Jung warned, "A man who is possessed by his emotions is no longer a man, he is an object." The system is structured to encourage emotional neediness because it makes men easier to control. Think about workplace dynamics. If you need the job more than the job needs you, your power shrinks. If you need a relationship more than the other person does, your respect fades. Even in small friendships, the one who chases more is valued less. This isn't cynical. It's just how human psychology works. When you hold yourself back emotionally, when you invest less than others expect, you control the frame. But here's where many men get it wrong. They confuse emotional detachment with apathy. Detachment means choosing your investments carefully. Apathy means never caring at all. A detached man isn't cold because he hates people. He's cold because he knows what his emotions are worth. Jung's idea of individuation means building an inner life strong enough that external noise doesn't shake you. You become like a fortress, calm inside, no matter what happens outside. This is why monks meditate in silence. Why stoic men can sit through storms. It's not that they feel nothing. It's that they control what they show and what they give. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your emotional energy is wasted on things that don't matter? How often do you react when you could have just observed? Mastering emotional economics doesn't mean cutting yourself off from life. It means realizing, every time you give your attention, your focus, your energy, you are spending something valuable. The question is, are you investing in things that grow you or things that control you? The nice guy believes that if he's helpful, available, and agreeable, life will reward him. But life doesn't work that way. At first, being nice seems like a smart strategy. You avoid conflict. You get small rewards. A smile, a thank you, a promotion. But slowly, something breaks. The nice guy feels unseen, unheard, overworked, and underappreciated. This is the collapse. Carl Jung called this the revolt of the shadow. When a man represses his frustration, anger, ambition, all for the sake of appearing good, those emotions don't vanish. They sink underground. And one day, they explode. The collapse often shows up in quiet ways. A man stops replying to texts, stops showing up on time, stops caring altogether. Or it explodes loudly: sudden anger, quitting a job without warning, walking away from a relationship overnight. Because the mask finally cracks. The problem wasn't kindness. The problem was unbalanced kindness. Kindness without strength. Jung said, you must integrate the shadow, or it will control you from within. The shadow holds all the parts of yourself you were told to hide: aggression, ambition, sexuality, boundaries. When the nice guy ignores these, he becomes incomplete. And incomplete men collapse. Look around. How many men seem quietly tired, silently bitter, resentful without saying it? That's shadow repression. And it happens not just personally, but socially. Entire cultures encourage nice guy behavior. Keep quiet, fit in, follow the rules. But history shows societies that over-produce compliant men eventually collapse too. Why? Because systems need balance. A man who only obeys creates stagnation. A man who only rebels creates chaos. Real masculinity integrates both, the capacity for discipline and the capacity for force. Imagine a warrior monk, calm, still, but ready. The stoic shift happens when a man realizes being good isn't enough. He must also be powerful. That means setting limits, saying no, walking away when respect is lost. The old self collapses, but a new self rises. One who no longer needs to please everyone. One who knows his worth even if the world doesn't recognize it. And here's the key. When the nice guy collapses, it's not the end. It's the beginning of real growth. If you feel that bitterness building, if you feel yourself withdrawing, it's a sign. Not that you've failed, but that you're ready to integrate the parts of yourself the system tried to delete. The parts that make you strong, complete, and free. The pattern repeats everywhere. In families, the man who always fixes problems but never says no gets quietly resented. In the workplace, the employee who never sets boundaries becomes the one everyone dumps tasks on. Even in friendships, the one who always listens but never speaks his own truth slowly becomes invisible. That is the deeper layer of the collapse. It's not just burnout, it's identity erosion. You stop knowing what you want because you've spent too long trying to guess what others want from you. Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So, the collapse is painful, yes, but it's also a signal, a necessary breakdown before the rebuild. After collapse, there's a choice. You can retreat completely, numb yourself, shut down emotionally, disappear. Or you can rebuild. And the rebuilding begins not with more niceness, but with honest boundaries. Saying things like, I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I choose not to engage with this. Small sentences that carry real power. The man who integrates his shadow doesn't stop being kind. But now his kindness comes with a spine. Like tempered steel, flexible but unbreakable. This is not about becoming cold for no reason. It's about becoming cold enough to stay clear. The collapse isn't the end of the nice guy. It's his awakening. From a boy looking for approval to a man who creates his own standard. From reacting to life to setting the terms. From invisibility to presence. The world needs fewer obedient men. It needs more clear men, integrated men. Men who choose their words, their battles, their silences, with intention. That is the man the system quietly fears. Because he cannot be owned. After collapse comes a choice. Fade away or transform. The man who chooses transformation begins what we call the Stoic shift. It doesn't happen overnight. At first, he still feels the old habits. Explaining, apologizing too often, waiting for approval. But slowly, he builds a new posture. One based on calm, discipline, and internal power. Carl Jung wrote, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health." The Stoic shift begins when a man realizes his center must come from within, not from praise, not from status, not even from love. Imagine two men walking into a storm. One panics, checks the weather, calls friends, looks for shelter. The other stands still, coat buttoned, eyes open, breathing slow. The second man is not cold. He is controlled. That's the Stoic shift. Moving from reaction to observation. Men who embody this shift stop talking so much. They stop explaining themselves to everyone. They do not answer every message, do not justify every action. Their silence becomes a boundary. Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." In a loud, chaotic world, calm is rebellion. But here's the key difference. Stoic doesn't mean distant. He no longer asks, "Is this okay?" He asks, "Does this align with who I am?" That's why people respect quiet men, not because they are mysterious by accident, but because they do not broadcast everything. The Stoic shift is ultimately about sovereignty. A man's emotions, time, and focus belong to him, not to the system. He understands that just because someone demands a response doesn't mean they deserve one. Just because society offers a rule doesn't mean it must be followed. The Stoic doesn't seek to destroy systems. He simply steps outside them. This shift changes everything. Relationships become cleaner. Work becomes simpler. Self-respect becomes automatic. And the paradox is, the less he chases approval, the more he receives respect. Not through effort, but through presence. It's not about doing more. It's about being solid. A man in Stoic shift doesn't say, "Look at me." He says nothing. And yet people do look, because true calm is louder than noise. The world will test this new posture. People will accuse you of being distant, cold, uncaring. But here's what matters. Discipline is not about appearing kind in every moment. It's about remaining true to yourself in every moment. The Stoic understands this. Attention is a resource. Words are a resource. Emotions are a resource. And wasting them on things that don't deserve them is a kind of self-betrayal. That's why you'll often see the calmest man in the room say nothing while others argue. He's not lost. He's conserving power. Real strength is quiet. It moves only when necessary. The Stoic shift isn't about winning every moment. It's about mastering yourself across time. From the first silence in the morning to the last thought at night, it's all part of the discipline. Jung's individuation process was never about isolation. It was about unifying opposites. Kindness and strength. Silence and action. Patience and decisiveness. That is the balance a real man carries. If you feel restless, if you feel pulled between wanting to speak and knowing you should wait, that's the sign that your Stoic shift is beginning. The transition isn't clean, it's messy. But every step forward sharpens the edge. And here's the final truth. The Stoic doesn't force people to respect him. He simply becomes the kind of man whose respect matters. Because when you hold yourself in calm discipline, the world has no choice but to listen, even when you say nothing. The final realization is simple, yet difficult to live by. Coldness is not cruelty. Coldness is clarity. Throughout life, you were taught that to be good is to be warm, to be always open, always available. But the truth Carl Jung hinted at in his deepest work is this: what you refuse to see controls you. The man who cannot say no becomes a slave. The man who cannot walk away is already owned. When you hold on too tightly to others, to status, to approval, you become entangled in invisible chains. And here's what's most dangerous. Those chains feel comfortable at first, like soft ropes. Easy to wear, easy to explain away. I'm just being nice. I don't want to upset anyone. I'll speak up next time. But there is no next time if you don't choose it. Jung wrote, "What you resist persists." By resisting your own shadow, your own strength, your own capacity for silence and separation, you prolong your own weakness. The final realization is this: you do not become cold to hurt others. You become cold to stay free. Because the system only owns those who need it. When you no longer need constant validation, when you no longer need approval, when you no longer need to be understood, you have stepped outside the system's control. This is not emptiness, it's fullness, the fullness of self. Nietzsche wrote, "The man who stands alone is always feared, and always free." You don't need to scream it, you don't need to post it, you don't need to prove it. A quiet man with clear eyes is louder than 100 shouting voices. So ask yourself now, where in your life are you still playing warm when you should be clear? Where are you giving energy to systems, people, patterns that no longer serve you? This is not a call to isolation. It's a call to centeredness, to choose your silences as deliberately as your words, to walk away as easily as you step forward, to measure your warmth not by habit, but by purpose. Because when you master this, you will find that those who once overlooked you now wonder where you went. And that wondering is louder than your presence ever was. Coldness equals clarity, equals freedom. That is the final realization. Not for show, not for revenge, but simply because the man who needs least holds the most power. And here's a secret the system will never advertise. The quieter you become, the more people project onto you. They fill your silence with their own questions, their own fears, their own assumptions. Because silence, when deliberate, is powerful. It signals, I do not need to explain myself. Most people live in constant reaction, answering every message, defending every choice, explaining every action. But the final realization frees you from that. You understand now. You are not here to be endlessly available. You are not here to be universally liked. You are here to live from the center of yourself. That center is built through quiet disciplines. Mornings spent in thought, evenings spent in reflection. Not chasing trends, not chasing approval, simply standing still while the world moves. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. Becoming whole, not perfect. It's why Nietzsche admired the man alone, not for isolation's sake, but because standing alone proves you do not rely on the crowd. You may lose some things on this path. Easy praise, fast friendships, surface-level validation. But what you gain cannot be measured in numbers or applause. You gain gravity. When you enter a room, people feel it. When you speak, people listen. Not because you demand attention, but because you no longer crave it. And that is why coldness equals clarity, equals freedom.